I remember when I first met Ethan at the marketing firm in Seattle where we both worked. I was just 25, fresh into the industry, eager to prove myself, and he was a senior sales executive, already making waves. Our paths crossed often, and it wasn't long before what started as casual office chatter turned into something much more. We began dating about a year into knowing each other, and everything felt right. The chemistry was undeniable, and our shared interests only brought us closer. Ethan proposed to me during a special date at an art museum we both loved. It was a place that had always been a sanctuary for us, a place where we could escape the pressures of daily life and just be ourselves. The proposal was romantic, with Ethan getting down on one knee in front of a painting we both admired. I was over the moon. The thought of our future together filled me with joy and anticipation. But that joy began to dim as soon as Ethan's mother entered the picture. I had heard about her before, Ethan's stories of her strong opinions and high expectations, but I never imagined how challenging our relationship would become once she was involved. The first time I met her was at a dinner to celebrate our engagement. I remember her critical eyes scanning me, as if searching for flaws. She wasted no time in expressing her disapproval, making me feel like I had to constantly prove my worth. Despite the uneasy start, I was determined to move forward with our wedding plans. However, things quickly became more complicated. Ethan and his mother had some expectations about how my life should change after the wedding, namely, that I should quit my job. Initially, the idea of stepping back from my career seemed like a feasible compromise, especially since I had always dreamed of being a supportive partner. But as the days went by, my doubts grew. I loved my job. It was where I felt most confident and fulfilled. The thought of giving that up, especially with the increasing tension from Ethan's mother, felt like losing a part of myself. The situation worsened when Ethan's mother took over our wedding plans. What was meant to be a modest celebration quickly turned into a grand affair, driven by her extravagant ideas. The budget spiraled out of control as she insisted on lavish decorations, an elaborate menu, and a venue far beyond what Ethan and I had initially agreed upon. We had planned for a simple, elegant event, but her demands turned it into a spectacle. Ethan's family had initially promised to contribute to the wedding expenses. However, just as the planning was reaching its peak, they pulled out, leaving us with the entire financial burden. I tried to keep costs down by making practical decisions, but every choice was met with criticism from Ethan's mother. Her constant interference left me feeling isolated and powerless. It seemed like no matter what I did, I was never going to meet her expectations. The final blow came after our wedding. Ethan, without even discussing it with me, canceled the lease on the apartment we had planned to move into. Instead, he arranged for us to live with his parents. I was stunned. The apartment had been a symbol of our independence, a place where we could start our new life together. Now, it felt like I was being forced back into a situation where I had no control. I felt betrayed and overwhelmed. As if this wasn't enough, Ethan announced just days before our honeymoon that he would be going on the trip with his mother, not with me. I was heartbroken and angry. When I confronted him, he dismissed my feelings, saying it was important for his mother to have this time with him. Then, in a shocking act of cruelty, he destroyed my passport, making it impossible for me to join them. In that moment, everything came crashing down. I realized that I had married into a toxic and controlling environment, with Ethan completely under his mother's thumb. The betrayal felt like a cold, harsh slap in the face. I had hoped for a partnership based on love and mutual respect, but instead, I found myself in a nightmare of manipulation and control. Despite the emotional turmoil, a spark of resolve began to flicker within me. I had been documenting my interactions with Ethan's mother throughout the wedding planning process, initially just to keep a record. Now, those recordings became my lifeline. They were a tangible reminder of the toxicity I had been enduring and a crucial tool as I began to consider my next steps. The pain was still fresh, and the path ahead seemed daunting, but I knew I needed to make a change. I had to stand up for myself and reclaim my life, no matter how difficult that journey might be. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a battle that would test my strength in ways I had never imagined. In the days that followed the wedding, The reality of living with Ethan's parents began to sink in. It was a constant reminder of how far my life had deviated from what I had hoped for. Their home, once a place I thought of as a temporary inconvenience, quickly became a prison. Every day, Ethan's mother's controlling nature seemed to tighten its grip on my life. Ethan's mother, Karen, was relentless. She continued to belittle my attempts to adjust to this new living arrangement, constantly finding fault with how I did things. From the way I cooked to the way I cleaned, nothing was ever good enough for her. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, trying to avoid her scrutiny and criticism, but it was impossible to escape. Each day I spent in their house was a reminder of how isolated and powerless I felt. To make matters worse, Ethan seemed completely indifferent to my distress. He was absorbed in his work, often spending long hours at the office or engaged in social activities with his mother. It was as if he had completely disconnected from me and our marriage. Every time I tried to discuss my feelings or suggest we talk about our situation, he brushed me off or deflected the conversation. It was clear that he was more concerned about keeping the peace with his mother than addressing the problems in our marriage. Then came the crushing blow. Just days before our honeymoon, Ethan dropped a bombshell. He announced that he would be going on the trip with his mother instead of me. When I protested, demanding to know why, Ethan's response was cold and dismissive. He said it was important for his mother to have this time with him, and that I should understand. My heart sank. It felt like the ultimate betrayal. Our honeymoon was supposed to be our time to celebrate our new life together, not a getaway for Ethan and his mother. My anger and hurt reached a boiling point when Ethan went so far as to destroy my passport. I had been planning on joining them, hoping maybe I could salvage some of the trip, but when I found out my passport was gone, it was like a final blow to my sense of self. I was trapped in a situation I couldn't escape, with no way to even leave and find some solace. The emotional weight of it all began to take a serious toll on me. I was overwhelmed and felt utterly helpless. I knew I had to find a way out, but I didn't even know where to start. The idea of confronting Ethan and Karen seemed daunting and futile. They had already shown me how little they valued my feelings and opinions. Amidst the chaos, I found myself turning inward. I began to reflect on the decisions I had made and how I had gotten here. My once bright and hopeful outlook had been overshadowed by a toxic environment and a controlling mother-in-law. I felt like I had lost a part of myself in the process. One evening, as I was trying to make sense of everything, I stumbled upon the recordings I had kept during the wedding planning. Initially, I had just wanted to document the process for my own peace of mind, but now they were a record of the emotional abuse and manipulation I had endured. Listening to those recordings was both painful and illuminating. They highlighted the extent of Karen's interference and Ethan's lack of support. It was clear that I had been subjected to more than just an overbearing mother-in-law. I was living in a deeply toxic situation. Determined to regain some control over my life, I started making plans. I knew that confronting Ethan and Karen directly wouldn't be enough. I needed to have a strategy and gather evidence to support my case. The recordings were a start, but I needed more. I began to document everything, every interaction, every incident of manipulation or control. It was also during this time that I realized the importance of seeking support. I reached out to my family, though I had been hesitant before. I needed their support and understanding more than ever. My Uncle David, who was a high-ranking executive at the firm where I worked, became a crucial ally. He had always been a quiet source of support in my life, and now I needed him more than ever. With the evidence I had gathered and David's support, I felt a glimmer of hope. I started to see a way out of the toxic environment I was trapped in. The journey ahead was daunting, but I was determined to stand up for myself and reclaim my life. It was clear that Ethan and his mother had underestimated my resolve. As I prepared to take decisive action, I knew that I would face resistance. But for the first time since all of this began, I felt a sense of empowerment. I was ready to confront the betrayal and fight for my future. The path was still unclear, but I was determined to navigate it with strength and resolve. The days following Ethan's announcement about the honeymoon were a blur of anger and despair. I was trapped in a house that felt more like a cage every day, with Ethan and Karen continuing their toxic control over every aspect of my life. I knew I had to take action, but the enormity of the situation felt overwhelming. Every time I tried to approach Ethan, he was either dismissive or evasive. I could sense his increasing detachment and his complete alignment with his mother's wishes. Despite feeling emotionally drained, I used my anger as fuel. I reviewed the recordings and notes I had collected, each one a reminder of the manipulation and control I had endured. I started organizing the evidence systematically, hoping to build a strong case for myself. My Uncle David's support became even more crucial. I needed his expertise and his position at the firm to navigate the next steps. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of sifting through my recordings, I met with David at his office. The seriousness in his eyes as he listened to my story gave me a renewed sense of purpose. He was shocked by the extent of Ethan and Karen's manipulation, and his support gave me the courage to press forward. "Laura," David said with determination, "you're not alone in this. We're going to make sure this gets handled properly. Let's start by reviewing the evidence you've collected. We need to build a solid case." His words were a balm to my wounded spirit. We spent hours going through the recordings and organizing them into a coherent timeline of events. David's calm demeanor and logical approach helped me see a way forward amidst the chaos. It was clear that Ethan's actions, combined with his mother's interference, created a toxic environment that was not just emotionally abusive, but also involved financial misconduct. The next step was crucial, gathering more evidence of Ethan's embezzlement. I had suspected something was off when I stumbled upon financial discrepancies in some of the documents I had access to. With David's advice, I began to carefully collect and document these irregularities. It was a risky move, but I knew it was necessary. Weeks passed, and I started to notice Ethan and Karen's increasing frustration with my apparent detachment. They continued to try and manipulate me into resuming my duties as a wife, expecting me to fall back into the submissive role they had envisioned for me. Their efforts only fueled my resolve. I wasn't going to let them undermine my self-worth any longer. Then came the pivotal moment. I finally gathered enough concrete evidence of Ethan's embezzlement and his mother's complicity. I had meticulously documented financial records, emails, and other relevant materials that painted a clear picture of the corruption. With David's help, I presented this evidence to the authorities and the company's internal investigation team. It was an intense and nerve-wracking process, but the gravity of the situation propelled me forward. As the investigation unfolded, the pressure on Ethan and Karen intensified. Ethan was called in for questioning, and his previously confident demeanor started to crack. The walls of their deceit were closing in, and the once seemingly impenetrable facade of their control began to crumble. Meanwhile, Ethan and Karen returned from their ill-fated honeymoon, their faces a mix of confusion and anger as they realized the extent of their predicament. They were completely unaware of the storm that was brewing back home. When they tried to pressure me into resuming the marriage, expecting me to bow to their demands, they were met with an unwavering resistance. "Laura, you can't do this," Ethan pleaded one evening as he tried to convince me to put everything behind us. "We need to work things out." "No, Ethan," I responded firmly, my voice steady. "I've seen who you really are. I've seen what you and your mother have done. I'm not going to be manipulated anymore." Their attempts to regain control only highlighted their desperation. I knew that the battle was far from over, but I felt empowered and resolute. I had taken significant steps towards reclaiming my life and ensuring that Ethan and Karen faced the consequences of their actions. In the midst of this turmoil, I found solace in the support of my friends and family, especially David. Their belief in me and their encouragement helped me stay strong. I was no longer the person who had been swallowed by uncertainty and fear. I was reclaiming my power and taking charge of my future. As I prepared for the next phase of this journey, dealing with the fallout of the investigation and moving forward with the divorce, I felt a mixture of apprehension and determination. I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that I had the strength to overcome it. The path ahead was still fraught with challenges, but I was no longer alone, and I was no longer powerless. The aftermath of the investigation was a whirlwind of legal battles and emotional turbulence. With Ethan's embezzlement exposed and his fraudulent activities making headlines, the firm moved swiftly to distance itself from the scandal. Ethan was dismissed, and legal proceedings were initiated against him and his mother. I was both relieved and anxious. Relief came from knowing that justice was being served, but anxiety lingered as I faced the fallout of my actions. Ethan and Karen's attempts to manipulate me had reached new heights upon their return. They seemed to be in denial about the severity of the situation. Ethan tried to reach out, claiming he wanted to make amends. His remorse seemed shallow and self-serving, aimed more at reducing his legal consequences than genuinely acknowledging the pain he had caused. One evening, he showed up at my apartment unannounced. "Laura," he began, his voice strained, "I know you're angry, but you have to understand, I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Ethan, the damage is done. Your actions have had consequences far beyond what you can imagine. I'm done trying to fix things that you broke." His face fell as he realized that his words had no power over me anymore. The legal system had already taken its course, and the weight of his actions was pressing down on him. Karen's position was no better. She was also facing legal scrutiny and had been publicly criticized for her involvement in Ethan's schemes. Despite their attempts to convince me otherwise, I remained resolute in moving forward with the divorce. I had long since made peace with the decision, knowing it was necessary for my well-being. The legal process was long and tedious, but every step was a reaffirmation of my strength and determination. With David's guidance, I navigated the complexities of the divorce proceedings, ensuring that I was protected both legally and financially. The divorce was finalized, and I felt a profound sense of liberation. The weight of the toxic relationship was lifted off my shoulders, and I could finally breathe freely. The months of emotional turmoil and legal battles had been draining, but they had also been transformative. I had faced my fears and emerged stronger. In the wake of these events, I began to rebuild my life. My work as a marketing manager, which had always been a source of stability, became even more fulfilling. I poured my energy into my career and personal development, rediscovering passions and interests that had been overshadowed by the chaos of my past. My friends and family, especially David, remained steadfast in their support, and their presence was a constant reminder that I was not alone. The journey of healing was ongoing, but I was determined to embrace it fully. I sought therapy to process the emotional trauma and to ensure that I was not carrying any residual pain into my new life. It was a vital step towards reclaiming my self-worth and building a future on my own terms. As I looked back on the tumultuous period, I realized that it had taught me invaluable lessons about empowerment and resilience. I had faced betrayal and manipulation, but had found the strength to stand up for myself and demand justice. I had discovered that true empowerment comes from within, and that, even in the darkest moments, there's a way to reclaim one's life and dignity. With the legal battles behind me and a renewed sense of self, I began to focus on the future. My career flourished, and I explored new opportunities that had once seemed out of reach. I surrounded myself with positive influences and continued to build a support network of friends and colleagues who uplifted and inspired me. Ethan and Karen faded into the background of my past, their influence diminished by my strength and resolve. I knew that I had taken back control of my life and was moving towards a future where I could thrive on my own terms. The pain of betrayal had been replaced by a sense of accomplishment and hope for what lay ahead. In the end, I emerged stronger, having navigated the storm of betrayal and manipulation. My story became one of triumph over adversity, a testament to the power of standing up for oneself in the face of overwhelming odds. The journey was not easy, but it was transformative, and as I looked toward the future, I did so with the confidence that I had the strength to face whatever came next.